This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we're covering the mysterious case of the I-70 Strangler, a series of unsolved murders that took place along the infamous Interstate 70.
That's right. This killer struck fear into the hearts of people traveling on the streets. But before we get into the nitty-gritty details, let's take a moment to appreciate the fact that our cameraman, Bob, insists we wear these somewhat amusing things on serious occasions like this.
Hey, someone needed to switch up the vibes in this dark and creepy investigation.
Well, you certainly succeeded at that.
Definitely. During the late 1980s and the early 90s, the I-70 Strangler terrorized the central United States, killing at least 12 people. The victims were all young men, and their bodies were found dumped in various locations along the route.
Yeah, it's like the killer had a punch card for every exit along the interstate. Kill 6 victims, get the 7th free.
You always find a way to make light of the darkest situations.
It's a gift. It's a dark and twisted gift.
Anyway, the I-70 Strangler operated in multiple states, including Indiana and Ohio. The first known victim was discovered in rural Hamilton County, Indiana, back in 1980. Sorry. Since then, authorities have linked at least 11 more victims to this cold murderer.
The victims, all young men, seemingly disappeared without a trace. Their bodies were later discovered in remote areas near the I-70, often showing signs of strangulation and found fully nude or partially nude.
That killer surely is cunning. There are hardly any clues left.
Yeah, that's what makes this case so frustrating. The lack of substantial evidence made it challenging for investigators to connect the dots.
What's truly disturbing is that the killer seemed to have intimate knowledge of the area. He knew the highways and back roads like the back of his hand.
Today we're going to cover the 12 victims who got into the hands of an I-70 Strangler. Without further ado, let's jump into the timeline.
On June 16, 1980, in Hamilton County, Indiana, 15-year-old Michael Petrie was discovered completely naked.
Just days before his bizarre discovery, witnesses claimed they spotted Michael hitching a ride in a total stranger's car, cruising around different parts of the city.
Talk about living life on the edge.
Unfortunately, things took a dark turn as the cause of untimely demise was revealed to be none other than strangulation. 2 years later, in July 1982, 23-year-old Maurice Taylor was discovered topless in the Weasel Creek in Hamilton County.
The cause of Maurice's demise couldn't be nailed down with certainty, but the sharp-witted coroner suspected he met a grim fate: strangulation.
Several months later, Delvoyd Lee Baker was discovered semi-nude near a river in Hamilton County.
Authorities located witnesses who claimed to have last seen Baker on the evening of October 2nd in downtown Indianapolis, boarding a blue van driven by a young white man sporting a bushy mustache.
Supposedly, Baker called his parents around 10:30 p.m. that evening, saying he was going to be late because he wanted to go to the cinema, which was concerning his parents since Baker had no pocket money on him.
Turns out, Baker and his 16-year-old pal were basically living it up, cruising the Indianapolis gay bars like it was their part-time job. According to his friend, they were hustling themselves out for $20 to $23 a night.
Cha-ching!
A year later, on May 28, 1983, 22-year-old Michael Andrew Riley disappeared after visiting the Vogue Theater, which was a nightclub in Indianapolis.
I heard it was the Broad Ripple.
I guess the sources can't seem to agree. Witnesses claim that Michael was last seen with an unfamiliar man, whom he later left with. A week later, his nude body was discovered in a ditch in Hancock County on June 5th.
The autopsy revealed that Michael had been strangled to death with a towel or similar fabric.
Yeah, this guy was definitely a sadist.
Right? Over a year later, 17-year-old Eric Allen Rutger vanished on May 7, 1985. His body was discovered shirtless near a stream in Preble County, Ohio.
According to his parents, Rutger was planning to attend interviews for his summer job on the day of his disappearance, yet he never attended to any of them.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Welcome back to BuzzFeed Unsolved Job Edition, where we investigate the mysterious disappearance of all my interview appointments. Are they hiding in the Bermuda Triangle of resumes? Did they stumble upon the elusive fountain of unemployment? Or did they simply vanish into thin air? My chances of landing a job? Join me, your host, as we delve into this puzzling enigma while I continue to eat my snacks on my couch in a state of blissful unemployment. This is one mystery I'm in no rush to solve.
No interview, no problem.
Bingo, baby.
When found, Rutger had an apparent burn mark on his left shoulder and had been strangled with a rope.
Ouch.
In Eaton, Ohio, 29-year-old Michael Allen Glenn was found in a ditch only in his underwear in August 1986. The exact date of his disappearance couldn't be established, and he was only identified 3 years later with the help of fingerprinting.
Cause of death? You guessed it, strangulation, which was probably caused by a rope.
Moving on October 15, 1987, at around 10 p.m., shortly after leaving his mother's home in Indianapolis, 21-year-old James Robin went missing.
He was discovered in a ditch 2 days later, covered in strangulation marks in Shelby County, which was located near the I-70. While investigating the murder, police located 2 witnesses which claimed to see cars near the crime scene.
One claimed they had seen a, quote, red Jeep Wrangler Renegade, end quote, while the other said the car was a, quote, Chevrolet Blazer, end quote.
Like the previous victims found, strangled to death, Jean Paul Thibault's body was found dumped near a stream in Defiance County, Ohio, May 1989.
Several months later, August 1989, 26-year-old Stephen L. Elliott was found in Preble County, Ohio. Once again, the body was found strangled, literally caused by a rope.
A year after, a 32-year-old man by the name of Clay Russell Boatman disappeared in August 1990 after leaving his apartment to visit a local gay bar. When discovered, his body showed signs of strangulation and he was found in a ditch by a group of children in Keystone, Ohio.
Oh wow, that must be a pretty terrifying witness.
Sure is. Near the end of the month, 18-year-old Thomas Clemenger Jr. vanished without a trace. He was later found at an abandoned railroad track near Greenville, Ohio, naked.
You know, Clevenger actually grew up in a poor environment in Indianapolis and started committing crimes and drinking. During his school years, he was diagnosed with an intellectual disability, and before his death, he engaged in prostitution near gay bars to earn money.
Have you noticed how the killer targets his victims? Most of his victims usually met within a 4-block radius at gay bars or other local industries.
Yeah, and the majority of them took up rather unconventional side hustles. Yep, you guessed it. They offered some unique services around the local gay bars. Not your everyday occupation, huh?
Otto Gary Becker, the last victim, was a 42-year-old man who was discovered in a ditch next to Gravel Road in Henry County, Indiana on October 7, 1991.
While investigating his murder, police found several witnesses who claimed to have seen Becker in a car with 2 other men driving north on I-70 near Indianapolis. According to them, one of the men was holding Becker down while the other was driving. The witnesses were shown photos of various criminals convicted of kidnapping and murder charges in state, but none of them matched the alleged abductors.
During 1982, a task force of 8 officers was created by the Indianapolis police to investigate the ongoing crimes.
We've got a serious crime in our hands. Let's form a squad. And just like that, the task force sprang into action.
Hold on to your detective hats because things just took a chilling turn. Following the discovery of Riley's body in June 1983, 4 more men were included in the list of potential victims. 25-year-old Gary Davis, 27-year-old Dennis Brodsky, 21-year-old John Roach, and 22-year-old Daniel McNeeve.
These people are dead. You gotta respect their names. Like the other victims, they were all homosexual, visited gay bars, and were killed in the same general area. It's 1983, and guess who decided to crash the party? That's right, the FBI. They joined the investigation with profilers who determined that the killer showed violent behavior when committing the crime.
Hey, these killers are showing some serious mood swings while doing some dirty work.
Oh yeah, I could definitely see them saying that. Anyway, as the investigation reaches its climax, it turns out they're dealing with not 1, but 2 separate culprits.
Is this like a messed up tag team now?
I guess so, and because of this revelation, the 4 men included in the list were removed.
Sorry fellas, you're out of here.
According to the FBI, the 4 victims were killed by a white man aged 20 to 30 years old, employed in a low-skill job with an affinity for military items and a healthy lifestyle.
Supposedly he was expressing homophobic views publicly while struggling with his unhealthy homosexuality, which led to the murderers being fueled by shame and self-harm.
As for the other 12 victims, they were supposedly murdered by a respected and overweight white man who was approximately 45 years old. They suspected that he held a high-paying job and is well regarded in his community. It is believed that the killer may be married but lacks the intimacy. Therefore, the motive behind the murders is likely because of his attraction to young men and because of the shame and guilt, destroying his career and reputation, resulting in a deep hatred leading to subsequent murders.
Moving on, there were a total of 4 suspects, which was narrowed down to the first suspect, Duncan Patterson, was a 47-year-old Florida native. During 1982, he was arrested on the charges of statutory rape against young boys.
Supposedly, a friend of Baker claimed to have seen the victim getting into Patterson's van. Patterson only admitted that he paid Baker $20 for oral sex, which the 2 had. However, he denied killing the boy and claiming he dropped off the boy at the Central Library and let him go to where he entered another van.
Since Patterson's testimony was corroborated by a witness and proven by a polygraph test, he was officially excluded as a suspect. Moving on to suspect 2, we have August Kaido, who was briefly detained and interrogated for the murders in 1982. Unfortunately for them, there was no evidence linking him to any of the crimes, so August was quickly released.
The third suspect was a convicted serial killer named Larry Ayler. That's a sad name. Ayler was found guilty of murdering 21 adolescent boys and young men. Police suspected that Ayler was their culprit since both killers targeted homosexuals and dumped the victims near interstates. However, a plea deal was negotiated saying that he would provide information to help solve over 20 murders.
Ayler wrote a 17-page
It's
confession.
Ayler.
Shut up.
Continue.
17-page confession out of fear of getting new charges. He ended up testifying against his partner, Aledo, and received a 60-year sentence instead of death. 2 days after Ayler's death, they released his confession where he admitted to killing 21 men, but the I-70 Stranglers victims were not among any of them.
The final suspect is Herb Baumeister, who was last seen leaving the Vogue Theater with one of the victims. Michael Riley, prior to Baumeister's suicide, 7 men were killed between 1993 and 1995, and their remains were found buried on his property.
That's gotta be a real estate nightmare. What would you even tell people who are interested in the property?
It's no biggie. Think of it as a resting in peace charm.
As of 2021, no physical evidence has linked the suspect to the victims. One of the only known theories surrounding this case is posed by Ted Fleischmacher, who claims that Boss Meyer wasn't responsible for the killings and that the police just wanted to swiftly close the case. This theory isn't very strong, but it suggests that the police engaged in misconduct by using him as a scapegoat to divert attention away from the real killer, who still remains unidentified and at large.
Perhaps one day we will have the means to solve this crime, or perhaps this case will be yet another victim to time. But for now, the age-old question will continue to persist. Who was the I-70 Strangler? The case will remain unsolved.